are absolutely thrilled that we have got Miss Aileen Campbell, Cabinet Secretary for Communities and Local Government, here with us today to join us. Welcome, Miss Campbell.
Hi there.
And I suppose it has been such a brilliant morning so far, just reflecting on the inspiration that's happening right across Scotland. And as colleagues have said earlier, we've been so proud to manage this programme in partnership with Scottish Government through the last 3 years, and we've worked tirelessly to support funded projects to ensure that our strapline of "We invest in change" is alive and kicking, and that legacy of the fund has a deep ripple effect into communities for a long time to come through the nurturing of our capacity building. So we're delighted that I think it's loud and clear that that's been achieved, and there's a real legacy of connected organisations throughout Scotland that'll go on collaborating beyond this funded period. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us, and you'll be aware that we sought out questions, poignant questions from across the 127 funded organisations to put to you. So, and they're brilliant questions. No pressure. So if it's all right, should we just kick off with the first?
No, that's great. Yeah, no, I'll be happy to. Look forward to the questions. So yeah.
Okay. So question one, it sounds a bit like blind date, doesn't it? Question one. So with the ongoing development of the Volunteering for All action plan, what would you hope volunteering looks like in Scotland in the next 5 years?
That's a really good question, isn't it? It's and I think, I think the experience of the last 10 months or 12 months now, we're coming up to nearly a year since we kind of the world sort of changed right before our very eyes. We've just seen at very close hand how important volunteering and communities have been to the resilience of the country. If we hadn't had the numbers of volunteers coming forward, the volunteers that were already in place, then we would not have been able to, attempt to even come out of lockdown or to try and think about what recovery looks like in the future, and people wouldn't have been supported to the level that they have been. And I was at an event this morning and mentioned that quite often it was the third sector and volunteers that stepped up when statutory services had to step back, and I think that's true of volunteers as well. They've been the variety, the breadth, the scale of what has been achieved has been phenomenal. So everyone now has seen that before their very eyes, the importance of volunteering. And I hope that means then going forward that we start to see and begin to see much more appreciation for volunteering, what it brings to our country and how it contributes to the well-being of our country as well. So I believe that over the next 5 years that's what we can set out to achieve, with the action plan, making that come to life, because we have lots of frameworks in Scotland. We've got a national performance framework that sets out the type of country we want to be, but we won't be able to achieve that unless we have volunteers properly supported and encouraged to volunteer across the country. And we also endeavour to have a well-being economy, or have a country that's based and founded upon well-being. And I've just heard some of your stories there and seen that video as well, that the sense of well-being that volunteers create and provide to people and communities is phenomenal, but also that sense of well-being that people get in return about what you get from volunteering is special as well. So what I hope is that we, over the next 5 years, build on this platform that we now have, momentum that we now have of a reappreciation of volunteering, and use that to really strengthen volunteering, the role of volunteers and the appreciation of volunteers. And hopefully by 5 years' time, and hopefully before that's the kind of situation that Scotland's in.
Okay, moving on to the second question. For many of the funded organisations here today, a lot of the final year of their funded projects has been taken up by supporting their communities in relation to the coronavirus global pandemic. What have been your key highlights for the third sector during this time? Are there any standout moments or organisations for you?
if I'm honest, there are just far too many. I think across the length, the breadth of the country, islands, highlands, urban, rural, we have seen huge endeavour, a collective rolling up of sleeves by the third sector to tackle the problem and challenges at hand. And we've also seen a renewed appreciation of what the third sector does and delivers by statutory services. The trick is now that we hold on to that and make sure that we don't lose that appreciation and the recognition of the agility and nimbleness of the third sector to respond to needs that happen in our communities. And I have also heard, I'm trying to think of some of the kind of, things, the calls that I've been on over the course of the last year. They really are reflective of place. If a community has, so for instance, in Orkney, I heard about people who were providing food and support and befriending, which is quite common across the whole of the country, but they were also doing things around online archaeology, because lots of people like going to Orkney for archaeology. Likewise, in Argyll and Bute, I heard how people managed to support the local shop through making sure that people were rooted to their local suppliers, and so again, it really is reflective of the type of community and place that you come from, what stories you hear about activity and action. And what I will say though, running through all of that, is the complete and utter dedication to communities, the complete and utter dedication that the volunteers in the third sector have to people, to the care and the compassion that every third sector and volunteering effort has had. That's been the kind of key common thread throughout. So regardless of where people have been in the country, it has all been motivated and driven by compassion and care. And that's why we supported it. That's why we put money to resource some of that effort. And it's why we want to, I think, learn from this endeavour. And it was for that reason, what we saw happening before our very eyes. We've seen communities rolling up their sleeves. We've seen third sector volunteering rolling up their sleeves, really tackling the issues at hand. And that's why we wanted to capture that and make sure that we embedded that for the future, which is why we established the Social Renewal Advisory Board as well, which had a specific look at volunteering and the third sector as well, and what more we need to do to support and reflect that phenomenal effort over the last 12 months and make sure we don't lose it, or in some way just let it slip and we go back to the old ways of doing things, of not respecting what the sector can offer. So the Social Renewal Advisory Board, the calls to action that's within that, I think would be something I would point to all the folk in this call today to have a look at, because that really does articulate, I think, where we want to go as a country, which values volunteering and the third sector and gives it parity of esteem.
So the last question, could you provide an update on any future funding linked to volunteering?
Yeah, so I know that this is a kind of celebration of the end point of the Volunteering Support Fund. So what we're in the midst of doing now is putting that out to another tender again to make sure that the new fund is planned for June of this year. So hopefully that enables even more stories to be told at the end of that new kind of tranche of work, and enables us to enable more volunteers to be supported going forward. And the one thing I'm probably sad about is that I'm not standing or seeking re-election again in May. So whoever's in this seat after the election will get the chance to announce it. But maybe, because I know that what I'm looking forward to when I've got more time is maybe doing a bit more volunteering myself. I want to play a full part in my community, and I view and see that as being achieved through getting my own sleeves rolled up and getting involved in the community, and whether that's helping out at the sports centre for where my boys go and play football or whatever. I'm looking forward to that, and I think the fact that what I saw growing up was my own mother and father volunteering, and what happy memories that created for me has made me feel very privileged to have volunteering as part of my portfolio, and to be able to do what we can to support some of the work that you're showcasing today. So I guess if that's the last question, I want to just say thank you to everybody who's been doing huge work, yourselves supporting the volunteers, but also the volunteers and the stories that we're about to hear and have heard this morning.